You know, we spend so much time planning, right? Our careers, holidays, family stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's this one, well, massive thing we often just sort of push aside.
Death.
Exactly, death. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, how do the things we're doing now, how we think, how that actually shapes what those final moments and maybe what comes after?
That's really the heart of what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into the Theravada Buddhist view on preparing your mind for death.
Okay.
And our main source here is Venerable Aggacitta Bhikkhu's work, Preparing the Mind for Death, the Theravada approach.
Venerable Aggacitta Bhikkhu. Got it.
And think of it less like just philosophy and more like a practical guide, a roadmap, really, based on some very ancient wisdom.
A roadmap, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about making ourselves feel a bit better about something unknown. There's real substance here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Venerable Aggacitta is drawing directly from the earliest Buddhist scriptures, the Tipinaka.
The core texts.
Right. And also from a really respected commentary, a kind of summary of Buddhist philosophy and psychology called the Abhidhamma.
Okay.
So yeah, this isn't just one person's opinion. It's a framework that's been, studied and practiced for centuries.
Right. So for you listening in, our goal here, our mission, is to unpack how Theravada Buddhism sees this whole process, what influences what happens after death, this idea of rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
We want to try and offer some clarity, maybe some practical insights into how to live now and how to prepare for that moment with maybe more awareness, hopefully spark a few of those aha moments.
Exactly. And central to all this preparation is a key question that Venerable Aggacitta asks.
Right.
What can we actually do? What can we do right now to cultivate a really wholesome, a healthy state of mind as we approach death?
Okay.
How do we create good kamma, good momentum that leads towards a favorable rebirth?
Kamma, that word comes up a lot. Usually means action, consequence, something like that.
Yeah, that's the general idea.
But it sounds like it's not just a simple case of, good deeds points versus bad deeds points. It seems more complex.
It really is. Even the Buddha himself pointed this out. There's a text, the Mahakama Sutta.
Mahakama Sutta.
Right. And in it, he gives examples of people who, seemed to live good lives but had difficult rebirths. And the opposite, too, people who did bad things but had fortunate rebirths.
Huh. So it's not straightforward at all.
Not at all. It suggests there are other really important factors involved. Things like our intention behind an action or other things happening before or after. And critically for us today, our actual state of mind right at the moment of death.
Wow. Okay, so it's not some cosmic tally sheet. There are layers.
Definitely layers.
Mm-hmm.
And to help us understand these layers, Theravada Buddhism, through texts like that Abhidhamma and as explained by Venerable Aggacitta, gives us a way to categorize kamma. Think of it like looking at our intentional actions, thoughts, words, deeds from 4 different perspectives.
4 perspectives on kamma. Okay, I'm ready. Let's break it down.
All right. So the first perspective is by way of function. This looks at what a kamma actually does, its effect.
Its job, kind of.
Exactly. So you have productive kamma. This is the stuff that brings about a result, like planting a seed.
Makes sense.
Then there's supportive kamma. This doesn't create a new result, but it helps an existing one along, like watering the plant.
Okay.
Then you have obstructive kamma, which, well, it hinders or delays results, like weeds growing around the plant.
Right. Gets in the way.
And finally, destructive kamma. This is powerful stuff. It can actually weaken or even completely cancel out the effects of previous kamma, like pulling the plant out entirely.
Wow. Okay, so our actions have these different potential impacts, creating, helping, hindering, or even destroying consequences. That's quite a dynamic picture.
It is. It shows how things aren't static. Now, the second way to categorize kamma is by order of ripening.
Order of ripening, okay.
And this one is super relevant for preparing for death because it tells us which kamma tends to take priority when it's time for a result to happen, especially at that crucial final moment.
So like a cue, which kamma gets to the front first?
Pretty much. The order is first, weighty kamma, then near-death kamma. After that, habitual kamma, and finally, reserve kamma.
Weighty, near-death, habitual, reserve. Okay, weighty kamma sounds, well, weighty. What makes it jump to the front?
It carries immense moral significance, either positive or negative, so much so that it basically overrides other kamma in determining the immediate rebirth.
Okay, what are some examples?
On the negative, the unwholesome side, Venerable Aggacitta lists some very serious actions. Things like deliberately creating a schism, a split in the monastic community, physically wounding a Buddha, murdering an arahant.
An arahant being someone who's reached enlightenment.
Correct. Also, killing one's own mother or father, matricide or parricide, and holding on to what's called fixed wrong view, which basically means stubbornly denying fundamental moral principles like the results of actions.
Those are definitely heavy. What about weighty kamma on the positive side?
On the wholesome side, the primary example given is attaining and maintaining deep states of meditation, known as jhanas, consistently, right up until the moment of death.
Jhanas, deep meditative states.
Yes, achieving and holding on to these can lead directly to rebirth in what are called the Brahma world's realms associated with that high level of mental cultivation.
Interesting.
The key thing about weighty kamma, good or bad, is its power. It's said to be irreversible in its immediate effect. Bad weighty kamma can obstruct spiritual progress later, while wholesome weighty kamma can secure that higher rebirth, potentially overshadowing other, less significant past actions.
Like a single, very loud sound drowning out everything else.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
Okay, so weighty kamma is the most powerful influence if it's present. What comes next in that ripening order?
Next up is near-death kamma. This is really fascinating. It refers to a kamma, an action or a strong memory of an action, that arises or is performed very shortly before death.
Right at the end.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting. The texts, and Venerable Aggacitta explains this well, suggest that even someone who maybe hasn't lived the most ethical life might still have a fortunate rebirth if, right at the end, they vividly remember a significant good deed they did, or perhaps manage to perform some wholesome action like generating feelings of kindness or even just take refuge with a clear mind.
Wow. So a last-minute good thought or memory can actually shift things.
It can have a significant impact on the immediate next rebirth. And the reverse is also true. Someone generally good might have a negative thought or memory surface strongly right at the end, leading to an unfortunate rebirth.
So those final moments, that final state of mind, is incredibly potent.
Potent is the right word. It doesn't erase all the past kamma. Those consequences will still ripen later, but the near-death kamma takes precedence for that immediate transition.
Okay, so weighty first, then near death. What if neither of those are dominant?
Then we look at habitual kamma. This is the kamma generated by our regular, repeated actions and ways of thinking, our habits, essentially.
Things we do almost on autopilot.
Exactly. If there's no overriding weighty or near-death kamma, then the nature of our ingrained habits, good or bad, will be the primary factor shaping the next rebirth. What you consistently practiced in life becomes prominent.
That makes intuitive sense. Our default patterns take over if nothing else is shouting louder. And the last category?
The last one is reserve kamma. Venerable Aggacitta calls this basically a catch-all. It includes all the other intentional actions from this life that weren't weighty, near-death, or habitual.
Okay.
Plus the vast accumulation of kamma from all our previous lives that hasn't ripened yet. It's the deep reservoir of potential consequences.
Got it. So, weighty, near-death, habitual, reserve. Understanding this order, how does it help us, practically speaking, in preparing for death?
Well, it highlights where we can exert the most influence now. We might have weighty kamma from the past we can't change, and near-death kamma can sometimes depend on circumstances beyond our control. But we can control our habitual actions and build up positive reserve kamma. By consistently living a morally upright, mindful, and compassionate life, we are essentially loading the dice in favor of a wholesome state of mind arising naturally as death approaches.
Ah, I see. So living well day to day is the best insurance policy, you could say, for dying well. It increases the probability of positive habitual kamma taking effect, or even influencing a positive near-death kamma.
Precisely. It builds a strong foundation of wholesome tendencies.
And the source, Venerable Aggacitta's work, goes into more detail about what living well really means in this context, doesn't it? Beyond just the basic, don't do bad things.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
He emphasizes what are called the 10 courses of wholesome action, or good conduct. And crucially, these aren't just about not doing negative things, but actively cultivating the positive opposites.
Okay, tell me more. Like abstaining from killing, for example.
Right, so abstaining from taking life is the first part, but the active cultivation is developing and dwelling with metta, loving kindness, and compassion for all living beings. It's a proactive mental state.
So it's not just passive avoidance, it's active development. What's another example?
Sure. Take stealing. It's not just abstaining from taking what isn't given.
Right.
It's also actively cultivating generosity, being content with what one has, and taking only what's freely offered.
I see the pattern. And with speech, false speech, for instance.
Instead of just not lying, it's actively cultivating truthful speech, being reliable, trustworthy, and it extends to other types of speech, too.
Like avoiding gossip.
Exactly. Abstaining from divisive speech, harsh speech, idle chatter. and instead actively cultivating speech that unites people, that's kind, gentle, affectionate, timely, meaningful, and beneficial, speaking in line with the Dhamma, the teachings.
That's a really comprehensive picture of ethical conduct. It covers actions, speech, and even the underlying mental states like avoiding covetousness and ill will, and cultivating contentment and goodwill.
Yes, and the 10th one is crucial, developing right view. Understanding the principles of karma and rebirth, cause and effect, and the reality of enlightened beings. Avoiding wrong views that deny moral causation.
So cultivating these 10 paths is key. How does developing our spiritual side, things like mindfulness, fit in?
They're deeply interconnected. Practicing these 10 wholesome actions inherently cultivates spiritual qualities: compassion, kindness, patience, generosity, wisdom. But the text puts a special emphasis on mindfulness, sati, or appamada, attentiveness, non-negligence.
Mindfulness, how does that help specifically when facing the end of life?
Mindfulness is essentially training the mind to pay attention, to observe, experience thoughts, feelings, sensations objectively, without getting carried away by liking or disliking, without clinging or rejecting.
Training the observer.
Exactly. Now, imagine the process of dying. There could be physical pain, fear, maybe regret, strong attachment surfacing.
Yeah, a lot going on.
Mindfulness allows you to observe these experiences as they arise without being overwhelmed. To see, this is fear arising, or this is attachment, and to recognize them as temporary mental states rather than getting lost in them. It creates a space for acceptance and letting go.
So it helps you navigate the intensity of that experience with more calm and clarity.
Precisely. It can help recall helpful teachings or attitudes learned during life. The Buddha's teachings on the 4 establishments of mindfulness, the Satipatthana Sutta, are often cited as a core practice for developing this capacity for self-awareness, which is invaluable at death.
Okay, so cultivating ethical conduct and mindfulness throughout life is the best personal preparation. What about family and friends? Can they help someone who is dying?
Oh, definitely. Venerable Aggacitta provides some very practical advice for loved ones. A big part is creating a peaceful and supportive environment. Well, first, gently reassuring the dying person, helping them see death as natural, encouraging acceptance, minimizing fear. Crucially, helping them let go of attachments to possessions, people, even their own body, and also letting go of grudges or remorse.
Letting go seems key.
It is. And the text specifically advises loved ones to try and remain calm themselves, to avoid loud wailing or excessive displays of grief at the bedside, as this can actually agitate the dying person and increase their clinging and suffering.
That's a really important point, though, probably difficult in practice. Create calm, not distress.
Exactly. Then actively provide opportunities for the dying person to generate wholesome near-death kamma.
Like what?
If they find it comforting, maybe play recordings of chanting or Dhamma talks. Facilitate making a donation in their name if they wish. Gently prompt them to mentally recite things like the 3 refuges, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, or guide them in a simple, familiar meditation they liked, like focusing on loving kindness.
So actively steering the mind towards positive states.
Yes. And another powerful thing is reminding them of their past good deeds. Some people even keep a merit notebook throughout life for this purpose. Recalling past acts of generosity or kindness can bring joy and confidence to the mind.
A merit notebook. That's interesting.
It is. And finally, just having supportive spiritual friends present, perhaps quietly radiating thoughts of loving kindness towards the person, can create a very beneficial atmosphere.
It sounds like a very compassionate, proactive approach to care. Now, one question that comes up. What if someone hasn't lived a particularly stellar ethical life? Is a good death, a good rebirth, still possible?
The texts do acknowledge that possibility. Because near-death kamma holds such weight for the immediate rebirth, a genuinely wholesome state of mind cultivated right at the end, maybe through sincere repentance, finding faith, or a sudden insight can potentially lead to a favorable rebirth, even if the life wasn't consistently virtuous. Think of it like a deathbed conversion in a sense.
So there's always potential for a positive shift right at the end.
There is potential, yes.
Yeah.
However, Venerable Aggacitta and the tradition strongly emphasize that relying on that last-minute chance is, well, risky.
Like banking on a lottery win.
Exactly. The surest way, the most reliable preparation, is to consistently cultivate virtue, mental discipline, and wisdom throughout life. Building that foundation of positive, habitual, and reserved kamma is what makes a wholesome near-death state much more probable and stable.
Yes.
Surrounding yourself with good spiritual friends who can support you.
Right. So strive to live well now, cultivate those positive habits and states of mind, and build a supportive community. That's the most reliable path.
That's the core message, yes.
Okay, so if we were to boil down the key takeaways from this deep dive into the Theravada approach to preparing for death.
I'd say first, really grasping the importance and the complexity of kamma, how our intentional actions shape our future, but not always in a simple linear way.
Right, the different types in ripening order.
Second, understanding the critical influence of our state of mind at the moment of death, the near-death kamma, on our immediate future.
That final mental state is key.
And third, recognizing that the best way to prepare for that moment is actually how we live our lives now. Cultivating ethical conduct, those 10 wholesome actions developing mindfulness, and nurturing spiritual qualities proactively increases the odds of a peaceful death and a favorable rebirth. Living well is preparing to die well.
That's incredibly clear. It brings the focus right back to our present actions and state of mind. It really makes you think. So a final thought maybe for everyone listening. Considering how much weight is given to our state of mind at death, which one of those 10 wholesome actions we discussed, maybe kindness, truthfulness, generosity, contentment, which one feels like something you could focus on cultivating a little more deeply in your daily life? Not just thinking about death, but actually making life richer right now.
Or maybe thinking about the power of near-death kamma. What conversations or perhaps reflections could you start having now with yourself or with loved ones to help prepare for that transition, whenever it may come?
Powerful questions to reflect on. Definitely gives us a lot to consider.